what actually will get someone to reach the point of I love myself?
It's a really good question. If you think about it, if I want to fall in love with someone else, what would that process look like? Is it us sitting next to each other and watching TV? Is it us sitting next to each other and reading a book? You know, those are all, this could be bonding experiences, but that's not how you fall in love with someone. You get to know every fucking facet of them.
Yes.
And you accept that. And you see the beauty in all of that. It's everything. It's not, I like this part of you, but not this. Like, you're not in love then, you know? And so for me, it was like, let me engage in that process of falling in love with myself the same way I would engage with that process if I was looking for my divine life partner. You know, the thing that really built my self-love was all of my struggles, all of my intense struggles, and the way that I showed up for myself every step of the way. And it's been doing hard shit again and again and again. It's been through that process where, like, at the beginning I didn't fully love myself, but I took the leap. I chose my soul over my ego. I fought for myself. I spoke up for myself. This is before I loved myself. And the more I did that, I built such a deep relationship with myself. Like, think about this. Imagine there's somebody else who every time you're struggling, they stand up for you.
Yeah.
They speak up for you. They show up for you. They solve a problem for you. Like, you're going to fall in love with them.
That's right.
Right? This person is always there for me. And so I became that person for myself.
Here we are. Me, Low, with Christina the Channel. What an honor. What a privilege.
What an honor on my side. It seems so right.
I'm so happy to be here with you.
Likewise.
Thank you for all of the opportunities you always give me, and for honoring my voice and wanting me a part of anything that you do is such an honor. So,
of course, Soul Fam.
As we talked about, we go back eons.
Yeah.
And I think everyone should know that.
100%.
We've known each other a very long time, and to be in this life with you and to witness your gifts and your mission is such a joy for me. It really is. So I just want you to know that.
Likewise.
Yeah.
You know, we've gone through some shit together.
Yes, we have. Yes,
it's so funny, like, being here in this setting now, and I'm like, we've had a million conversations that
hours and hours
probably should have been recorded.
They should have,
and
for
now
sure.
Here we are. I'm like, I don't even really know what to say.
I mean, most of our conversations were just getting downloads for each other.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. I wanted to ask you, have you started?
Oh my God. Crying my eyes out reading The Codes of Divine Love. And it's funny, I cried in your excerpt in the beginning that comes from you. And I was like, wow, because you are such a mirror for me. And we have had so many experiences that are similar throughout our lives of just questioning, like, is this love that I'm seeing around me? And it's such a huge shift energetically, and like a portal, that book, you know? And so thank you for bringing it through.
Thank you. I'm glad it's affecting you.
It is. It is for sure. It's funny because I have so many questions for you.
Really?
And I want to take people back really quick to when I met you. I was guided to you synchronistically to do an Ahai session, an energy healing session. And
I will never forget it.
Yes. And you were the first person that ever really described me back to me where it resonated.
Really?
Like the things you said after you did the session, and like our connection was like made in that session for you too. And you were so moved by it, and I was so moved, and it was just such a wild, and to be here now with you almost 3 years later is just wild. So, but I'm curious for you, you know, what really brought you to this work? Like, what made you, I know there's like I know the big themes, but what actually made you say, I'm going to go all in on my channeling gifts, my energy healing gifts? Like, what even made you discover that you are like this master energy healer?
An accident? You know, I think a lot of people, and you might know these stories, it was not just one moment, it was little by little over time. And when I won't get into the whole thing, you can ask more questions, but I know a lot of people have heard this. Like, I was struggling with my health once again, and I I went to see my first intuitive, and thankfully she was legit. And that set off this cascade of kind of spiritual events. And I had a visitation from an angel that night who told me to become an energy healer. And so I synchronistically manifested my spiritual mentor, like literally the next day. And when I started training in energy healing, you know, none of this had anything to do with, am I going to do this for a career? Or it wasn't that serious. It was just, I was, you know, I had a successful career. I was making money. I loved what I was doing. I loved my life. I was dealing with these health problems and they weren't going away, and you're willing to try anything. Yes. And so I'm looking at my life from this angle of like, I need to understand who I am, and I'm just following the breadcrumbs. And I was clearly getting led there. So I never was thinking about it as I might do this as a career. It was more of just, I'm getting intuitively guided. And I thought of it like, maybe it's like, you know, like maybe I'll take pottery classes and start doing pottery on the side. Like, you know, it wasn't never that serious. And when I did that mentorship, my mentor, she would tell me like how gifted I am. And, you know, you're thinking, yeah, of course you're going to say that, you know, being nice to me. And I always had, with the different spiritual mentors I've had that I've worked closely with for a long time, people have always said that to me. And it's kind of hard to believe. It's kind of like, you know, when your parent tells you how amazing you're, like, thank you. And I appreciate that. And I love you. But like, you're just saying that. But I think, you know, there came a point where, and there's like that humility piece. But then eventually I was like, I need to like realize I am really fucking good at this. Like it just comes really naturally. And there were things that my mentors would say where I'm like, okay, they're not just making that up, you know? And I mean, my one mentor, she told me, she was like, I've been doing this for 20, 30 years. Like, and I've never experienced energy as strong as what you said. I've never felt anything like this. And I'm like, okay, interesting. You know? And then my other mentor, who that was much more about my psychic abilities, he had told me, he said, you know, he was an old man. He was like, I've worked with thousands and thousands of students like closely, and you're in like the top 3 most advanced mediums I've ever met. And that was the first day I met him. He told me that. I'm like, okay, I don't think you would say that if you didn't really mean it. And that gave me some confidence, you know, but I always still felt like, is this for real? And that was just something I was kind of doing in the background for my own understanding of myself. And what ended up happening was that side of my business, I was, you know, I always say it was kind of like underground. Like I never talked about it publicly for a long time. And it was just something that I kind of energetically said, yeah, I'll take clients, and people would just come in the door. And I thought, wow, it's so crazy, because I work so hard with my platform and marketing, and you know, I get clients, but it's harder for me. It's like, I'm doing all this work, and here's this thing that I'm not really putting that much time or energy into. I'm not doing any marketing. I'm not trying at all. And it's just full. And I really learned that experience. Like when you're in alignment, the universe is going to send you people, right? Yes. The universe is trying to send you people for, you know, what you're here to do. And that's always been true. It's like, you know, I'll never have a problem booking energy healing clients or intuitive readings. No. I just won't. It's like, it's my mission, you know? So, that was always going on in the background. And then as that became a bigger part of my business, I pivoted from nutrition into business coaching. And during business coaching, what's funny is, I was telling Kaylin this the other day. I said, when I was running biz school, biz school started to just turn into, we were talking about spiritual stuff all the time. Like we weren't even talking about business. We're talking about psychic abilities and channeling. And there, in one of my rounds of biz school, my business coaching program that I used to run, which is so fun. It was one of the most amazing things I've ever done. And one of the rounds, we were talking about that so much that I was like, do you guys want me to just start a psychic training course? And everybody said, yeah. And so that's the first time I ran psychic development. Like I just ran it I didn't advertise it. It was really just everybody who's already in biz school. Like they filled up the program, and I just kind of did this, like, you know, and I taught them, and that became the psychic development course, you know? So it just like filled itself. There was no advertising. And incredible. As I was in that, you know, I'm doing all this business coaching. That part of my business is, you know, blowing up. I'm doing really well, but in my personal life, I'm like, all I'm thinking about and doing is I'm channeling. You know, I'm channeling, I'm doing spiritual work, and all the conversations in my business coaching settings are about this. Everybody just wants me to train them in their gifts. So eventually it just became such a big part of who I was that I couldn't hide it anymore. And I started to feel that feeling I get when I'm over something, you know, like where I'm just like, I don't want to have another business conversation. I'm bored of it now. And, you know, the deeper you get into channeling, well, let me say during that period, that was such an important time for me because it was really nice to have all of my business work front and center so I could have that sacred time for myself to really become a channel, you know, and to give myself a couple of years to be in my own process, to develop my skill set, to work with mentorship, to go through that giant death and rebirth and get to know myself. I really needed to be in an incubation period. It's a very intense, sacred time. And I needed to just be in my own space with it. I could not have been going through that and publicly sharing it. No. And so, I'm really grateful for that. But eventually, you know, I'm just waiting for the day to be over so I can go channel my beings, you know, and I'm like, this just needs to be my career. So that was when I did the full rebrand, and I had kept Biz School for a while because it was my main money maker. And I eventually realized I needed to close it because it was energetically connecting me to that old part of myself. And what I will say is when I first made that pivot, when I rebranded and made that pivot, all the spiritual side of things, none of that was bringing in money. None of that, and this is really important for people to understand, like none of that was bringing in money. I lost a lot of my audience. Like a lot. Okay. And I knew that was going to happen. Right. But it was just part of it. It's just part of it. Like to bring in fresh energy, you know, it is what it is, and new people will eventually come in, but pivots are not easy. They're not easy, and you have to be fully committed to where you're going. And I understood that. You know, it's a mental test, it's an emotional test, it's an energetic test, and financially, you know, when you build your company up to be, you know, a 7-figure business, you have high expenses, right? Like I'm paying people. I'm like, it's not just me anymore, right? So I feel that level of responsibility where I have to, you know, at that point, I'm a lot more, I guess, financially, I'm looking at things from more of a financial lens now than earlier when it was just me being a solopreneur, because then it's just me, myself, and I, and, you know, fuck around and find out. But it's not like that anymore when other people, you know, they're depending on you to pay their bills. So as I made that transition, I kept Biz School because it was the financial foundation of the company, and kind of planned on, hey, as these spiritual things pick up, because I know that will take time, it's a big pivot, then I will eventually phase that out. Or part of me was like, I don't know why I would need to phase it out. It's such an amazing program, and a lot of people that come in to my community need this help. And so as time went on, like too much time went on where nothing was growing. And I remember having a lot of conversations with my one friend in particular, Rachel, about it, because I was like, I'm not getting anything. Like I had never felt so cut off from my intuition. I felt like I was getting nothing. And there was a long period of time where I was getting nothing for myself. Like I could read for other people, but when it came to me tapping in for myself with my guides, it was silent.
It's one of the worst feelings ever.
Nothing. And there was probably close to a year where that was happening for me. Okay.
Wow,
and that was a total mind fuck where I'm like, I'm the most psychic person I know, and I'm getting nothing for I was like, I just rebranded as a psychic. I'm like, are you going to turn off my fucking gifts? You know, it was a mind fuck. It was really hard. And financially things are just getting stuck. And now I'm feeling even the business side getting stuck. Right. And I'm energetically in this like in between. It was really hard. And I remember this one conversation I had with my friend Rachel, and I remember I just got out of a massage because I kept getting massages because I thought hopefully, you know, it triggers some download. and nothing came through. And I remember Voxering her after, and I was like, I'm not getting anything clear. Like I will do whatever my higher self wants, like whatever my soul wants, just tell me. And I'm not getting anything. And she goes, well, maybe you're not getting anything because they've already told you. And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, maybe it's just the obvious thing that you don't need to be told and you just know. She's like, what do you just know? And I'm like, I don't know what I just know. She's like, well, which timeline do you want to pick? And I started thinking about that, and I thought, I'm really still straddling timelines. Like, I'm halfway in, halfway out. You know, I did this whole rebrand, but like there's still some places where I'm energetically connected to the other part of myself. I'm still in that timeline because of safety. And Rachel has always been a really great person for me to kind of keep me in check and like push me. She's like, there's still a piece of your ego attached to it. She's like, what is left that your ego is attached to? Yep. And I was like, biz school. And that was an ego death for me to close down 100%, because I loved that program and it's helped so many people. And that was, you know, one of many times in my life I've had to think about, like, you know, there are things that we can love that are great, that are serving people, that are amazing, and they can still be out of alignment for where we're headed. And I really realized it was me picking a timeline. Like, what do you want? You know, go all in. And it was after I closed that down that my ability to read for myself came fully back online. Like, that was the big test. Like, are you going to do it or not? You know? And they also told me, they're like, you know, you have to know how to navigate your humanness, and you have to understand intuition in a different way, where it's like, you know, I can get so dependent on what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing, and what happens when that is taken away. It's like, what do I know? Because that's our intuition, what do I know?
Yes, that's right.
And so I had to learn that in a different way. And I think that also humbled me and kind of reconnected me to, you know, the version of myself when I was really disconnected from my gifts, and also other people I know who like aren't experiencing all the things yet that I experience, and they feel unclear. Like, how do we navigate that? And that was a really important learning lesson for me of like, hey, I'm just like everybody else in this experience. Like, I have to make a scary decision. Like, real money is on the line, you know, and that was an important lesson for me. And so after I did that, then things started flowing. Yeah. But it was only after that release. So that was all a very long process of me fully like coming out and making this my business. It was a process, and that was for a number of reasons. You know, that was logistically changing a business. There's a lot on the back end. Yes. Especially my business up until that point had been so many very long-term contracts, right? Like, clients are signing like a year contract. It's more long-term things. So when you make a decision, you're like, well, I have to wait 6 months until this program is up, right? Things like that. And just all the other cleanup bit, but also the emotional piece, you know, and sometimes it can take a while for us to be emotionally ready. And I was going through a lot of changes in my personal life with relationships as well. Like, I could not I could not technically, but emotionally I was not willing to try and navigate all of that at the same time of public backlash and personal backlash. And so I dealt with the personal piece first and let those relationships rearrange. And, you know, I lost relationships and I gained new ones. And once that stabilized, then I did the public version of it. And that's kind of how it happened.
I think it's so important for everyone to hear that, because there is this misconception for people that are very tapped in that everything just happens like this for them. Yeah. But I think it's important to remind people. I love that you reminded people of like, we're still navigating the human part. What scares you the most about your gifts, or about exploring the vastness of the cosmos and all that these gifts expose you to?
A lot of things. One thing is receiving information that is very scary for my human, that feels insurmountable. Yeah. You know, like negative information about timelines. Like, there are certain things I'm just like, I don't want to know. I don't want to, but like, once you know, you can't unknow. And there are certain things where, you know, and I have very strong boundaries with this now, so I won't get delivered something like that. Like, and I know that, but that is, you know, like a fear, which is why I have the boundary. I'm like, don't tell me something that's detrimental that like can't be changed, you know, where I'm just like, oh, you're fucked. You know, I don't want to know that. Nope. Things like that. I think the other piece that scares me that I have just had to learn to accept is, you know, it really changes relationships. It really changes relationships, the way that I view the world, where it's like I can just meet someone and like I just know, you know, like you're either going to be in my life and I know usually like for how long and what it's going to look like, or you're not. And it's not this whole like getting to know you or this question or we'll see how it goes. It's just like I know. Yes. And I think the other piece is, because I see it so contractually, I think sometimes people can feel like I'm so detached, I'm not emotional about it. And that's not true. It's like I do hold both, where on one level it's like, look, contract's up. Like it just is what it is. Yeah. Like, yeah, we were supposed to date for 2 years or like whatever it is, you know, and, or you're supposed to, you know, work for me for a year. It's like, I don't take it. It's not a personal thing. It's like, that was just the contract. And I also have the human experiences. Of course I have feelings and emotions because I care about you and all of that. Right. And both are happening, but I think I'm like so in acceptance of just how the contracts work, and it doesn't bother me at all. Sometimes people feel like I'm like, I don't feel, or they feel like that can be very cold, but it's just the way that I view the world, you know? And I think sometimes that it can also create like this level of intensity for people, where some people are just kind of afraid to even talk to me because they're like, they think I'm reading them, which I'm not, you know, like she can read my thoughts. Like, you know, everybody thinks I'm running around reading your thoughts. No. I really, no offense, but I don't care about your thoughts. You know, like lovingly, I don't really care that much. So I care more about my peace than your thoughts. Exactly. And
I have my own thoughts to think of.
I got too many of my own thoughts, girl. So there's that, you know, but I think there's also that kind of intensity for people, where people like you, it's not a big deal because this is how you are too, where I'll meet someone and I'm like, immediately I'm like, soul family, like I'm going to be friends with them for the rest of my life. And I just met you 5 minutes ago and I'm acting like, you know, we're like deep in, and the other person's like, whoa, I have not, like, what? Like I have not caught up to this. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, we're getting married. Like we're having kids, you know, like just like 2 seconds ago. Yeah. And it's not that like crazy, like latching type of woman. It's like, it's like, this is just what's happening, you know? And I also know, I don't know. I think that there's a lot that scares me about it, because there are certain things that can feel so final, and obviously there are things that aren't. Like we have so much choice, and timelines can change all the time. I know that better than anybody. And at the same time, there are certain things I just know. Yes. And it is final, you know? And that can be scary, you know? Like there's comfort for us on a human level in some, I'm not sure, you know? And there's the piece of like, the other piece that scares me is when I receive information, I feel, obviously depending on the information, but I have a responsibility.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Right?
Yeah.
I know this and I can't unknow it. And so I can't not share it or not talk about it. But sometimes there are things I don't want to talk about, or I don't want to be put on the chopping block, or I don't want to deal with, or I don't want to be the person always that, because I am the person, right, that tells you got to get out of this relationship, as we've talked about. Like, not to random people, like close people, right? But I'm put in a lot of situations like that where like I'm the one that knows, and therefore I'm the one that needs to get in there and deliver. And thankfully, I think I'm very good at that. Most people, like,
lovingly,
people respond well to that, where I'm the delivery person. Yeah. Because that's all soul contract. I'm not going to like random people and saying this, right? No. But that's not always an easy role to play. No. It's not an easy role to play, right? And even just on the larger level, like platform wise with my business, like, yeah, of course my gifts scare me because I can't not do it, you know? And all these things I've navigated with, like, do I want to channel? Do I want to, like, that's always a conversation. And it's like, at the end of the day, I can't not. Like, I can't know all this shit and unknow it. And I was also telling Kaylin this the other day. I'm like, you know, if I think about, oh, what if I went and I did this as my career? I'm like, I know too much about the other side and what's going on all the time. I can't just, once you know, you know, and once I know things and I'm looking at the shit show of humanity and how people are so off fucking track, I can't not say anything. Not because, you know, I'm the only one that knows, but because a lot of people don't say things. That's right. And there's a reason I have the personality type I do, which is like, you know, just word vomited out, someone's got to say it. Yeah. And so that tends to be me, and not everybody likes it. And, you know, you don't always want to be that person. I think so much of my life, because I've always had this kind of that's part of my personality. There was a long period of my life where I became the person that I'm just kind of standing in the corner. I'm not the one front and center. I'm observing. Like, I was very much just kind of on the sidelines, and that's a much safer place to be.
Yep, sure
and
is.
I stayed there for a long time, and now it's like, no, I'm throwing you center stage, like, say the controversial thing, and that's not easy. No. So, you know, there are a lot of pieces of it that scare me.
I think in observing you too, because I'm so close with you, you embody such a level of conviction and truth that is alarming for people. And I think there's this mirroring that happens where, you know, part of your mission.
That's a really good way to put it. Alarming.
Like, it is alarming because part of your mission is to be such a mirror of truth for people and help them through that truth. And we talk about this all the time. Like, we're seeing how much is not truth. How much people aren't saying the truth. They're not living the truth. There's masks. They're way off track. And, you know, we've certainly had our own periods of that. But I do feel, you know, with your gifts, like, you are required to speak truth with a capital T.
Yeah.
And I think that's just part of it, you know. But I would be curious, like, with your evolution at this point, how are you looking at, because you just released a huge book on relationships of all kinds, and I think you know, we talk a lot about romantic relationships, but how are you looking at relationships differently now in your own life, but also just in general for the collective?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, and you know what I want to say, it's so funny, is in both of my birth charts, my incarnation cross, which is essentially your soul purpose, they're both the same, and they're both, you're here to trigger people. You're here to shock and trigger people. Like, wow, right? And I think for me, seeing that, like, the reason, I mean, there's so many reasons I love those different systems, but our human sometimes needs that kind of validation. And I was like, wow, like, it's like literally written in the stars, I'm here to trigger people. So it would be one thing if that wasn't a natural part of my personality. Like, I'm not going to try to be someone I'm not, but that is such a natural part of my personality. It's been like that my whole life. Like, even when I'm not saying anything, I seem to be very triggering.
Yep.
And there's something validating about, like, you know what, like, all press is good press. Like, you know, at that point I was like, fuck, like, if I have to be the villain, like, it is what it is. Like, I'm just going to be me, and the right people will, like, see me and understand me and appreciate me. So I think that's just funny. But how I see relationships differently now, I think a big piece of me is is more like curious about how it's gonna unfold. So to speak, because I do think polarity is really changing for people. And when I vision into what does it look like for us to be fully sovereign and not sourcing from each other and fully activated in both our divine feminine and divine masculine individually, how different will a relationship be? I don't think we can even fully, like, comprehend that, because we're not even really close to that. And I think one of the things that became so apparent to me through that book, not that I didn't already know it, but I think just really sitting with it, is just how many people are pulling everything from everyone else. Like, it's all about everybody else. Everything is oriented toward, what do people think about me? Right? Or I need this from you, or like, I need my partner to be this. And how much of that is I'm just trying to source everything from everybody else instead of look at myself.
Yes.
You know? And I think a lot of us maybe who are listening to this show, right, like, understand that concept. When you really start to look at the people in your life, and even for me, some of the people that I would consider very high frequency and who are channels and healers and on stages, and I look at their lives and some of the things they say about certain relationships, and I realize how much pulling there is and how much dependence there is on other people showing up for them and in a certain way. And I have these expectations of you to be there for me, not from a place of I'm holding you to your highest potential, but from a place of I need this from you for me.
Yes.
Right. And that's not really the point. Right? It's not really the point. And I think you know, so much of how we relate in all different types of relationships is so based on obligation and these expectations from previously ingrained templates. And That's I come up against this in every part of my life. I come against this with friendship all the time. And I can't believe I have to have these fucking conversations where I'm like, I can't even believe I have to have these conversations. And when I do, I'm like, this is just not in alignment, where it's like people getting upset, I'm not replying fast enough, or hey, I'm not the friend that's going to hang out with you every week. Like, that's not who I am, you know? And it's like people, hey, I just feel like you're not showing up for me because, you know, it's taking you this long to reply. And I'm like, well, tough shit. It's actually not my job to show up for you. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, if it's aligned, it's aligned. But it's a very different way of relating. It is. Because I love myself and I love hanging out with myself and I have a life that is full with myself, you know? And my closest friends are all the same, you know? And I think what's interesting is people will always ask me, like, because people will see my dynamics, right? And they hear conversations with my friends and like how close, like, we have deep fucking relationships. Like, those people have not known friendship the way we experience friendship. And they see that and they don't understand, well, how do you guys do that when you're sitting here talking about how you guys only talk once every 3 months? Or I'm like, it's literally not the same thing. It's actually what allows it to be so much deeper.
It's exactly right.
And so it's just a lot of people, it's like the way that they know they're secure in a relationship is how often are you talking to me and replying to me and how often are we hanging out? And there's no real stability to it. And that's where people freak out about, you know, I've been watching all these random TV shows and this theme that keeps popping up. It's like these teen relationships, and somebody's going away for the summer and they're worried about, oh my God, it's going to ruin my relationship with my boyfriend. I'm leaving for the summer, you know? Are they still going to like me when they get back? And the thing is that grown ass adults in marriages are like that, right? Like, their partner needs to have an eat, pray, love moment and like go to Bali for a month. And they're like, you can't, you know, people are like that. And I think that's very interesting to look at, of like, why? Like, where is all this attachment? I need to control you, or like, we don't trust each other. It's all this like quantity, because what are you afraid of? If you are afraid that if you don't see or talk to somebody for a month, 3 months, a year, and that changes things, you don't have a solid foundation in your relationship. Right. It's just that simple. It's just that simple. And people don't want to hear that, you know? And I know we know many people where it's like they're holding on to, we live close to each other. We see each other every week. I don't want things to change. If your schedule has changed and you don't see or talk to each other as often and things change, it didn't have a real foundation. Like, this is about, you know, it's convenience. Yeah. I guess this book is so old now. Have you read Modern Romance by Aziz Ansari?
Yeah, way back.
I mean, I remember reading that like when it came out, which is forever ago. This was way before I was into any of this stuff. And it was so fascinating, just those points of like, you know, what happens when people are kind of conditioned to pick their partner based off of who's around them. What's convenient, what's available. And there's sort of that survival. And suddenly we have social media and the World Wide Web, and you can talk to somebody from across the world, you know, and suddenly there's so many more options. And I just find it really fascinating to reflect on all of that, like human behavior and psychology and what people perceive to be a strong relationship. When I'm looking at it vibrational, I'm like, there's no real resonance here. And even, you know, as I talk to different people and I just listen to what they're looking for in a partner, and people are going back and forth about, you know, is it important that they have the same hobbies as me, or is it important that we have the same values, or is it both? You know, people kind of go back and forth about all of this. And I just think kind of living in that question is interesting. And I think that most of us don't really know what we need or what we want.
That's right. That is it.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of deep reflection. And that's what I think
it's not just reflection though. It's experience.
Yeah.
It's trying different types of relationships. And what happens is people will just do a different version of the same thing with different people, right? They bring their same relationship template, whether that's a friendship or romantic relationship, into their new relationship. Yeah. And so when you're putting somebody into that template, instead of like creating something new, or even understanding, well, how do you operate, or dating a different type of person, right? You don't know. So for example, let's take me dating, right? If a guy is like, I want to hang out 4 times a week, I'm like, sorry, never gonna happen. Right? Like, it's not like, unless we're living together, you're not seeing me 4 times a week. Yeah. Right? That's just not who I am. And so from the get-go, that's like a misalignment, and we're never gonna, like, it's just not gonna work. Right? So from the beginning, it just doesn't work, and people will go and find the other person that wants to hang out 4 times a week, and I'm gonna go find the person that's really busy like me and like only wants to see me once or twice a week, because that's all I have the capacity for. Right? But here's the thing. Until you take a second and you try that other thing, you don't really know what you really want.
That's true.
You don't. And so there's a lot of things that we say no to right off the bat because we think that's what we need. And then we recreate a dynamic in a new relationship, and maybe what you needed was the opposite thing. And you've never really tried it. Right? And so I've had this conversation with friends where, look, because I've been on all sides of the spectrum with how often I communicate, how often I spend time with people. Like, I've tried all of that, because you don't know what you don't know. And I've had this conversation with certain friends where they're like, you know, I want to see, it's important to me that I see you this often, or I talk to you this often. And I go, but why? And have you ever had a friend who operates like me? And they'll say, like, no, because this is important to me. Like, but how do you know? Like, how do you know that if we did it this way, you wouldn't feel just as close, if not closer to me? Like, you don't know. And I think that's really important for people to think about, of like you have to experience life. And I think that's the other problem, is everybody's sitting here thinking about it, reflecting on it, thinking about it. And reflecting on things is important, but you can only reflect so hard. Like, at a certain point, you have to live and notice how you feel in your body, and notice what gets created and what actually happens. You have to go do it. You have to experience life. And I think that's the big problem with social media. Like, everybody's saying all this stuff and giving all these opinions, and they're sitting there thinking about it. They're thinking about it. It's sort of like, I think about in college, you know, when you take a class from a professor that hasn't actually done anything, they've just learned from books, versus the professor who went out, lived life, built their businesses, did it, and now they're teaching you from experience. It's completely different. And everybody on social media, not everybody, but I'm going to be dramatic, right? Everybody. A lot of people on social media are just sharing things they've read about, or they've seen about, or they've thought about. And who is actually living it and saying, this is what worked and this is what didn't, and this is what I learned from all these different trials I did, right? You have to experiment. That's the point of life. And people just want to sit there and think about it and experiment in their head, so they do it once and it's the right way. And that's just not how it works. No. You've got to live. You've got to try things. And I think that's the big kind of, you know, problem. Like, we're sitting here conceptualizing everything, and conceptualizing is a helpful foundation, but you got to try. You got to live it. Yes. You might be surprised.
And we often are. Do you feel what's your perspective on being, like, what do you notice about your life when you're alone versus, and you know, alone, but like when you're not in a intimate partnership versus when you aren't?
Oh, like a romantic relationship? I mean, I think that depends on the relationship I've been in. You know, I definitely, like, when I'm left to my own devices, I have very weird schedules. Like, when I just can do whatever the fuck I want, right? Like, my schedule is very odd. Like, I'm neither like nocturnal or, you know, like, I'm none of it.
From 10 p.m. to 6 a.m.
It's like very odd, you know. And when I'm in a relationship, obviously I adjust myself so I can have time with my partner and all of that. And I'm happy to do that, you know. But when I am single, I let myself do whatever the fuck I want. It's pretty weird, like the way in which I do things, and even just like the things I eat and like all of that. Like, I don't know, I just kind of do all of that because it's not affecting anybody else. But I think, you know, the other thing is my life tends to move a lot faster. It moves a lot faster when I'm single, because I don't have any energetic tethers to anybody, you know. And even my friends, it's like, I think my romantic partner is one person I'm really tethered to. Like, even my friends who are my long-term friends, I don't hold, like, we don't have like cords that are like keeping us in a certain place, if that makes sense. So that can be the one thing I'm very aware of, like I can feel very stuck or like stuck in a certain version of myself.
Yeah.
Or expanding a lot. And so I just find that a lot, like time moves, like a lot more happens and time moves differently when I'm single.
That makes sense.
Because I can just blow through contracts really quick. You know what I mean? I can just like go and do things and travel and like take action. When it's just you can do whatever you want. You know what I mean? When you have a partner or kids or like the more responsibilities and attachments you have, it's not always like at a drop of a hat. I can, go to Europe next week. I have to, maybe there's the kids or we got to coordinate schedule, like things like that.
Yeah.
So just because I think that's a very like real ability you have when you're single to do things quickly. And the more like when you do things quickly, you complete contracts, you learn lessons, and life moves quickly and more opportunities open up faster.
So true. Yes.
And of course there's like, and this is important for me in a partnership, like I want to be with someone who is down to do all that with me and understands the importance of that, you know, like, because when you're on that same page with your partner and they understand like, hey, when I have the urge of I need to go do this, they get like, yeah, gotta go do it. So we're going to prioritize doing it. That doesn't hold you back as much,
And I think that leads into, some questions I have. I'm really curious your answers to these, of how you navigate the very deep emotional experience that people like you and I have.
Yeah.
And I know every human has an emotional body. We know that emotions are just part of it here. But the more I go into my own experience, the more I feel like I see how, most people are not feeling the way we feel.
Yeah.
And I would love for you to talk about how you navigate your emotional experience with all of your gifts, plus being a human and a leader on the planet and in business. Like, how do you work with your emotions differently now, or feel that? What do you notice that's different about it now, or given everything you've gone through?
Well, I think one big piece of it was accepting it, because I feel like for so much of my life, I was so resistant to how deep and intense and complex my emotional world is. And I was very aware, from a young age, as I know you were, I'm like, other people are not feeling this shit the way I am. Like, to the point of like, I feel like my body is going to explode. Right. I feel like my insides are getting twisted. Like you can't function, and from a very young age, I was aware of that. And it makes you feel very disconnected for people when you're trying to understand, trying to explain, and especially as a kid, when you're having an emotion where you literally feel like you're going to die. Yeah. And you're getting gaslit.
Yes.
Yeah, you're fine. Just go. And it's like, I literally viscerally feel like I'm going to die if I do that. And also just, I don't know, like the way your heart breaks and how deeply you love, like I'm very aware of how the bigness of how I feel and how that can deflect a lot of people. And so part of it has been accepting that and learning to love that and learning to use that as my superpower. Yeah. It is a manifestation superpower. It's an intuitive superpower. And those same gifts that are wildly uncomfortable for me, and also maybe wildly uncomfortable for a lot of people, are also those same gifts that allow me to see people so deeply and hold space for people in such a different way. And I am, for many, many people tell me, like, hundreds of people have told me this, like, you're the one person I feel like really can see me and can hold me, and so that is a superpower that I'm really grateful for. Yeah. And I was just telling our other friend this yesterday. I was saying, the thing about me is I'm very happy that I'm such a safe space for so many people, and I've always been like that. I always joke, like, I just always I attract the misfits. I've been like that since I was a kid. And people just, like, it's everybody who feels like a misfit, I mean, I've always felt like a misfit. Yeah, same. And people just feel safe with me, and I'm so glad they do. And it's, I think, because just vibrationally, whether or not people are consciously aware of it, they know I'm not judgmental. And the thing about me is I'm very opinionated, but I'm not judgmental, like, at all. There's a difference. I'm so open-minded. Like, there's really nothing, that where I'm like, and I was telling our friend yesterday, the richness and complexity and intensity of my emotional experience, I do feel like is the thing that makes people feel safe with me, because they know like there's nothing too dark, there's nothing too scary. I can like people will share the real of how they're feeling and what they've been through and the thoughts in their mind, the things that scare them with me, and things they haven't told anybody else, because people will have thoughts and feelings and emotions that they're like, if anybody knew this, they would never want to talk to me again. They would look at me differently. They'll never respect me. They'll judge me in whatever way. And people tell me that stuff because they just know. And I think part of why they know is because they know, like, I've been through all the same shit. Yeah. Like, there's no thought you've had that's crazier than mine, right? Or no emotion that's bigger or more intense than something I felt. And that's not something people need to consciously know or need to explain. It's just a vibration. People understand. And that's like knowing all of your darkness, like knowing you're going into your darkness, knowing your darkness and your light. It's not all love. It's like going into that pain and like the dark parts of ourselves. And that has made me a safe space, you know? So for me, accepting and like loving those emotions and understanding, you know, like the bad can come with the good. Like there can be trade-offs with everything. So how can I use this to my advantage? And also, like, who would I be without it? That's the thing is, like, I'm also the person that can feel such intense joy from such small moments, and other people are just numb to it. Like, I like being able to, like, have a conversation with someone and just start crying because I'm like, I fucking love you so much. I'm like bawling with, like, joy and gratitude. Yeah. Other people don't have that gift. It's just neutral. Yes. You know? And so that's where you can really experience the highest highs as well, 100%. I have to have time and space every single day to be in my own field, to emote, you know, and for me, I talk to myself out loud, you know, well, I'm talking to my guides, I move the energy. I mean, movement is a big part, like exercise movement is a big part of my life. I mean, I walk all the time. I lift weights. I, you know, do dance is a huge part of my everything, like somatic and movement wise. Like movement is a big thing for me to express it, to get out the energy, for sure. Yep. Baths are great for me. There's a lot of, like, for me, visceral, like I need to use my voice box. I need to make my noises. I have to make my noises and get it out, you know? And so there's screaming, there's punching pillows, there's crying. And I just have to have time every day, every week to like really emote and really feel and like let it move through. And and my creative outlets for that, you know, like poetry is a big one for me, like really getting it out, you know, like as soon as you write a poem, you're like, oh fuck, like that was cutthroat, and that like really moves it. So things like that, anything I can do to really move the energy are very important. And of course, my support system, I have to have people in my life. Well, everybody in my life has to be somebody who can hold me in that. Everybody in my life has to be somebody who's not afraid of my intensity, because I have to be able to just be me and like unleash, and them just to receive me and hold space and know it's not about them and not be scared. That's right. You know, so I attract people who are just as deep and intense as me, because they're the only ones that can hold me and they don't get freaked out when I'm just expressing, you know, right. And that was a big wound for me growing up. Like I was always told I was too much, or I could tell people could not be in the presence of my emotions. Be around you, and that doesn't feel good. Like you're like, this is just a natural thing moving through me, and I'm getting rejected, and I'm getting abandoned, and I can tell people are judging me. And I was told by those people that was too, you know, I'm too much, like pull it together. And I'm like, fuck that. Like, absolutely not. And also, me feeling an emotion is not about you. And that's the big thing is people don't like it because they make it about them. Yes. Right? Like, you're making me uncomfortable. I'm not making you feel fucking any type of way. You're choosing how you're feeling because you're uncomfortable with somebody having passion or being intense about something. You know, it's kind of like, I don't know, if I express an opinion and I'm very strong in it, and don't do that. Why? Because you're uncomfortable with the energy that's moving through my body right now. And it's not about you. That's right. It's not about you. That's right. It's one thing if I'm expressing in a way that's very intense, like at somebody or toward them, or like talking to them. It's like totally fair for you to say like, hey, like this is feeling very intense for me. Could we change the tone? Like that's totally fair. But when I'm just expressing as me, about me, like that's not about you. That's right. And stop making it about you, and people make it about them. Yes. And you know, everybody wants everybody to adjust themselves so that they're comfortable. Yep. And that's no one's job. Like stopping, like, if that's you, that's no
So
one's
true.
job, right? And
It's not.
it's a problem if you're always uncomfortable.
It
like,
is.
That's your own personal work. Like, it is so rare for me to get uncomfortable. It is so rare. There are, of course, times when I get comfortable or get uncomfortable, but that is just so rare. Like, there's not much somebody could say to me like that would really trigger me, you know? Because I have to take responsibility for that. And I grew up in a lot of settings where just as much as people were uncomfortable with my emotion, there were a lot of people who expressed in big and frightening ways to me as a child.
Yes.
That it scared the shit out of me. And I realized and I learned no matter how hard I try, I can't control them.
Yes.
And whether or not that was valid or whatever or healthy doesn't matter. At the end of the day, I can't actually control how people express themselves. And so what can I do within myself to fortify myself and create safety within myself so that no matter how other people express, it's not affecting my emotional space and my energetic space. So that's the thing. Like, you could go off in front of me and be completely unhinged, and I'm just going to witness. It's not about me, you know?
Yeah,
and
I love that.
That has been a really important strength. And I think, like, I wouldn't even know that skill if I wasn't also the one causing the chaos. You know, like, it's like my responsibility to handle both sides of the coin, right? Like,
yes.
like if you dish it, you got to be able to take it, that kind of energy. So my support system is a huge piece of that, and having people I can vent to, I can talk to, I can express in front of, like, everybody I'm close to has to be fine with holding that. Otherwise, it's just not going to work, because I will not filter myself. I will not, like, suppress my expression. And there was a relationship I was in a while back where that really, like, that was my big lesson. And I realized how much I had dampened my expression, like the way that I communicated, the way I felt, all of, like, my body language and my movements and my noise, like, everything, because of what that person wanted and how they were judging me. And that was on me because I was adjusting myself.
Yes.
Right. But that was a really important relationship for me to go through, where I was like, I'm never doing that for myself again. And if I'm too much for someone, then go find less. Right. It's that right. Simple. So those are the big things for me, is really, I think that acceptance is a big piece, and, like, learning to love that about myself. And then, of course, moving it through and having people that can hold that for me. Yeah. But I think a lot of people, it's like, if you feel like you're too much in your expression, who in your reality is feeding you that story? Because you don't get that out of nowhere. And maybe nobody's saying that to you, but who are you feeling that with?
That's right. And
we can love people a lot. Like, there are so many people that I love dearly, but, like, they're not close to me, not because they're not amazing people, but because that is one quality I require in people close to me, where I just know they can't receive it or they can't hold me being me. And so I don't have people in my reality that are, like, making me feel like I'm too much anymore.
Yes. So beautiful. It's like it's a testament to holding your energy and vibration for so many years, you know? And I think one of the things that I've always admired about you is how much you do love yourself, and you're willing to put yourself first. And people can call it selfish, they can call it whatever they want, but is it really, or is it sovereignty? And I want to ask you, how do we learn to really love ourselves? There's a lot of people that struggle with that. I'm one of them. It doesn't come natural to me, you know? Yeah. What do you think is, because that to me is the problem with the planet. Like, yeah. And, totally. And the book, you know, when you talk about people seeking it outside of themselves, in all of your experience and all the people you've worked with and all the things you've seen, you talk a lot about people that don't take the action of things they know they need to do to get what they want. I akin it all back to, like, self-love. Is like, because if we loved ourselves, we would do all the things. Yeah. But so what is, in your opinion and experience, like, what actually will get someone to reach the point of, I love myself?
It's a really good question. And what I would, I mean, I often say, people think I'm weird about this. I often say, it's like, if you look at someone long enough, you look at anyone long enough, you will realize how beautiful they are. If you get to know someone long enough, like you spend enough time with them, you talk to them, you will fall in love with them. Doesn't matter who it is.
I agree.
100%. Like, I know that to be true. You know, like I feel that way about so many people, right? Because it's like the more there's no other thing than the more I get to know you, I'm going to love you more and more, right? And that includes like the more I get to know all your quirks and maybe the things that are annoying about you and the dark parts of you and the things you've been through and all the things you try, like the things you try and hide, I just fall in love more.
Yeah.
And I say that because for me, it was like I had to just really get to know myself deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And the more I got to know myself deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, there's nothing else that could happen other than I fell in love with myself. And you know, that started as a lot of trauma healing and shadow work. And I think a lot of people do all of that with the intention of I need to fix myself, or like almost like I'm going to go in and then I'm going to come out. And I'm like, no, I'm going to go real deep with me, like forever. And it's really acceptance. Like it's acceptance, you know? And I think like you of all people would understand this. When I look at people like, and I'm committed to love, like there's no dark part of them that could come up that would make me say, I don't love you.
Yeah, that's right.
That's real love. And I hold that for other people. And so I just was like, I'm going to do that for me too.
Yeah.
And
I love that.
I know that's nothing anyone's never heard. Like everybody's heard that, like get to know yourself, but I'm like really get to know yourself. You know, it's like, it's not, people spend a lot of times with, there's spending time with yourself, and people will spend a lot of time with themselves, but I'm like, but what are you doing in that time with yourself? Like they're distracting themselves in that time with themselves. Maybe they're learning, maybe they're reading a book, you know, maybe they're being creative, but it's like, that's not the same thing as really getting to know you. And I think that's the thing is, if you think about, if I want to fall in love with someone else, what would that process look like? Is it us sitting next to each other and watching TV? Is it us sitting next to each other and reading a book? You know, those are all, this could be bonding experiences, but that's not how you fall in love with someone. You get to know every fucking facet of them.
Yes.
And you accept that. And you see the beauty in all of that. It's everything. It's not, I like this part of you, but not this. Like, you're not in love then, you know? And so for me, it was like, let me engage in that process of falling in love with myself the same way I would engage with that process if I was looking for my divine life partner, you know? That I think that's the biggest thing. And the other thing has been for me to depend on myself. You know, the thing that really built my self-love was all of my struggles, all of my intense struggles, and the way that I showed up for myself every step of the way. Oof. And it's been doing hard shit again and again and again. It's been through that process where, like, at the beginning I didn't fully love myself. But I took the leap. I chose my soul over my ego. I fought for myself. I spoke up for myself. This is before I loved myself. And the more I did that, I built such a deep relationship with myself. Like, think about this. Imagine there's somebody else who every time you're struggling, they stand up for you.
Yeah.
They speak up for you. They show up for you. They solve a problem for you. Like, you're going to fall in love with them.
That's right.
Right? This person is always there for me. And so I became that person for myself. You know, there's nobody I trust more than me. Like,
so
like genuinely, there's nobody I trust more than me to show up for myself, to speak up for myself, to make it happen, to bring my dreams to fruition. Like, I 100% trust myself. 100% depend on myself. If I decide I want to do something, it will happen.
Yes.
And that is not a concept I came to by thinking about it harder. That has been through lived experience.
Yes.
Again and again and again. And I think a lot of people, when they get in those tough decisions, in those tough moments where they're making a difficult decision, they turn to other people.
Yes,
and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing to do, right? Because we need each other for support, and it's like all of it can be true, right? But for me to cultivate this level of self-love, it has been me doing things on my own. Like, it has been me having that foundation of, I don't know what the fuck to do, and so I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah.
Me asking or depending on somebody else is not an option.
Yeah.
And through that, again and again, I really do. I do love myself. Like, I admire myself. I have become all the things that I want. Like I become that version of myself. It's that simple.
Yeah.
If I want to be more this way, then I set things up to become more that way. You know, I learn about that. I form new habits. Like it's really that simple. And so with that has been exploring, you know, my own past and why I'm the way I am, and approaching that the way I would if I was talking to somebody else, where I come at that with understanding and compassion. Well, I understand why you're doing that. And yeah, I see you. And I love you know, it's like, I'm just approaching myself the same way I would anybody else, with love and understanding and compassion, and and orienting from the point of, I've already decided I'm going to see the beauty in you. I've already decided I'm going to see you from love. Right? Yeah. I'm going into the conversation from that energy, not I'm going to evaluate you and then decide if I think that I love you or if I think that you're beautiful. I'm not coming from that angle. Yeah. It's not an evaluation to figure out which it is. It's, I've already committed to seeing the beauty in you. And I look at myself in that way, you know, and I think it's like, self-love can be such a corny topic, you know, it's like, I don't really talk about it that often, but like, and I say this, you know, humbly, but I really like, there are not that many people that love themselves the way I love myself.
I agree.
To be honest. I agree. And I think that's such a,
you're here to teach that.
I hate even just saying that. It's an embodied thing for me. And I think that's why how people perceive that is I'm very confident. And I'm not pretending to be confident. I just am confident. Yeah. And I'm confident because I love myself so much. Right? The same way, like with my partner, I'm in love with you. I'm confident in you. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. You know? And so for me, it's been showing up for myself and keeping promises to myself and all of that basic stuff you hear people say, but the difference is like you don't see it lived out.
That's right.
You know? And I think that a lot of times when I say those things, people really hear it from me because they know I do it. And a lot of people say those things and they don't really do it. They're talking about self-love, but they don't really love themselves. Yeah. And so I'm gentle with myself. I'm kind with myself. I'm accepting of myself. I'm compassionate with myself. I give myself the same grace I give everybody else, right? And I hold myself to a high ass fucking standard because I know I'm that great.
That's right.
So for me, it's been, I'm just going to treat myself the way I do other people. And I love people. Like I really do. And I think to your point, it can be very alarming for people, especially when they first meet me, because it's like very intense, you know, and I'm like, I've already decided I really like you, you know, like, because I do see people from that lens. I think that's a rare thing. I'm not like evaluating.
Yeah. And I think the way I observe how much you love yourself, it affects like how you express. You're so expressive. Yeah. And I think it's because it's coming from an embodied, to your point, it's embodied, you know? The guides are not going to let me get away without asking about a journey you and I are on that we share commonality in, which is we are both genuine twin flames on this planet. And, you know, we talk a lot about the experience of it, but because you've done so much deep work on yourself, I mean, the whole twin flame journey is truly embodying self-love.
It's a self-love journey.
Yes.
Yep.
And I would love for you to talk about how the journey what it's opened up for you in a deeper, you know, when we think about self-love. And, you know, I know the book talks about twin flames and these different soul connections we can have. But as a twin flame, you know, how do you feel about yourself as you go deeper into that journey? And how have you noticed your love for yourself or how you view yourself has evolved or shifted?
Well, it's forced it to deepen because I already had that foundation of loving myself.
Yes.
And then this person comes into the mix who is you in another body.
Yep.
And is an exact mirror for you. And so the same way we all know what it's like to have people mirror for us and what that triggers within us. Now suddenly I'm seeing things I've literally never seen before about myself.
Yeah.
And that's the one person that triggers me like a lot. Right. And so that's really good for me because I rarely have that experience.
Yes.
And all of those triggers are showing me my wounds, right? Things I'm afraid of and things I don't like about myself or things that annoy me, right? Whatever annoys you about your twin is what annoys you about yourself.
That's right.
It's really that simple.
Yep.
And so that's helped me see so many of my blind spots in those other places where hey, I am rejecting that part of myself, or I'm not looking at that part of myself, or not accepting it. The other aspect of it is when you share a soul, and you're like, you share an emotional body and energetic body. And so that person's decisions and their emotional world directly impacts yours. Like you feel it in the same moment all the time. And what that triggers a lot are these control issues.
Yeah.
And as somebody who prides myself on taking control of my reality, and I suddenly realize you're in a situation where this other person who has free will can decide whatever they want, and whatever emotional or energetic impact that has on that person, you will also feel it.
Yep.
And that is a very triggering thing for someone like me, right? Where you can't control them. And, you know, I think a great parallel to that is probably being a parent.
Yes.
You know, it's like so. you love your child and you feel what they feel, you know, and your child can go off and make a stupid fucking decision, and you pay the energetic, emotional consequences just as much as they do. Yes. Right. And that's it's like these control things that are very hard for us. Like, how do I fully accept and love myself and this person when they're doing stuff that's fucking me up?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we want to point the finger and blame that other person. We want to point, like, and we do this in family dynamics. We do this in all kinds of dynamics where we know we're energetically connected, you know, but
that's right.
That's like I think, and the big piece of the twin flame journey is typically like you're not in 3D communication. And so it's different when there's like a family member and you could say, hey, you're making me feel this way. And it's like a very different dynamic when it's kind of essentially like not a random person, but like kind of like a random person off somewhere else in the world, like doing their thing, and it's affecting you, and you feel it more viscerally than any other connection possible because it's literally the same emotional energy body. Yep. It's different than a cord, you know? So for me, it's just shown me a lot more wounds I've had that I wasn't able to see before. And it has forced me into a deeper level of acceptance. Yep. That's the real thing, is acceptance of like things are going to go the way they're going to go, acceptance of myself, acceptance of timelines, acceptance of not everybody's going to calibrate to me, you know? And the thing is, how do I describe this? Your twin flame is like, it's like same, but different. You know, it's like exact same, but also opposite. And we tend to attract or allow people in our lives who accommodate our personalities.
Yes.
And your twin flame does the opposite of accommodate your personality. Yes. They're the exact opposite. So it's like, if you're super confrontational, they're super avoidant.
Yep.
Right? If you are very emotionally expressive and everybody around you is like that, they are the complete opposite. You know, it's like there's that complete opposite kind of energy where really what it is it's really not enabling your bullshit anymore. You know, like this dynamic, you can't enable the bullshit. And that's the point of the direct opposite, where you realize how everybody is like everybody in your life calibrates to you and is like used to how you operate. And then there's somebody who literally doesn't ever. And that forces you to look at yourself in a very different way.
Yes.
When it comes to compromise and understanding yourself, accepting yourself, it's ego. You know, you're really seeing all of the pieces of your ego.
Yes.
So for me, it's definitely helped me understand acceptance in a much deeper way, and seen areas of resistance that I wasn't before within myself, and mirrored back to me a lot of things that I don't like about myself, wounds I still needed to heal, and things that I want to be more like. Yeah. You know, like abilities I also have on a soul level that I would like to lean into more, and I want to become more like that, you know? So that's also been very expansive, you know, for me. There's been a lot, obviously.
Would you say it's been one of the more challenging parts of your spiritual journey to be met with that?
Yes.
Yeah. Because most people I know we talk to, it is like, it's the hardest thing they go through. And I know that's been my experience.
I mean, I would say, like, honestly, I live, and I don't like to hierarchy it because it's all relative. Do you know what I mean? But like the twin flame journey is one of the most intense, if not the most intense spiritual experiences possible. Yes. Like there's a reason it happens. It's your last incarnation. This is like final round. Like you finish this one, you're off. You're good. You're not coming back.
Yep.
Right. And it requires a level of self-mastery. Like young souls we haven't had yet, you know, like it's like lifetimes and lifetimes of being able to do it, of figuring it out, you know, and it takes lifetimes and lifetimes for people to actually learn the lesson. That, and honestly, my experience as a trance channel with a walk-in, being a walk-in and a trance channel, channeling like over 20 different beings, like that is a fucking hard spiritual experience.
Yes.
Like there are a lot of very intense spiritual experiences I go through, like kind of all mixed together, but that's also my life is meant to be an example.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Like I'm here to live the extremes.
Yes.
I'm here to live the extremiest of the extremes. And every area of my life.
Yeah.
And that gives me things to share about and life experience to, you know, like to relate to people and to understand people and to channel books. And there's a lot of topics I'm supposed to touch on, and I've got to have personal experience with it to even touch on it and to relate to people. So, you know I'm here to experience the end of the bell curve, and that's not always easy, but I will say, yeah, the twin flame experience is very, very intense. It's the most intense level of shadow work you can do with yourself. Well, it's possible. It's the exact mirror. Like there's no other mirror like that. But I also would say in terms of intensity and difficulty of spiritual experiences, my experience with and I'm combining my trance channeling and my walk-in because they're intricately connected. It's like essentially calibrating my body to be a Stargate for so many different consciousnesses, you know, and holding different souls in one physical vessel. Most people will never, and they don't need to, have any idea how fucking intense that is.
Yeah.
And I'm really fucking proud of myself for how grounded I am through everything and how I've navigated all. Most people will go completely insane through just one of those experiences. And you and I well know how many people through the twin flame journey like get committed into a mental hospital, like literally.
Yes.
And very, you know, and are in worse situations than that. It drives people insane.
I know.
It drives people literally insane. And same thing with the level of my gifts could easily, if I wasn't grounded and integrated within myself, I could be 100% mentally insane.
Yes. Yes.
So, I mean, maybe some people think I am, you know, but,
no.
You know, like, you know what I mean? And even just the whole identity, like, the identity things I walk through, you know? And I mean, twin flame gives you that identity thing. Like, is this mine or this part? Like, what the fuck? Like, whose is this? What's going on? Are these mine? Like, I don't get it. It's like total mind fuck. But then with the way that I channel like that, like these beings are in my vessel, and mine at this point is just as much theirs.
Yes.
As it is mine. And having a true ass walk-in, like I know a lot of people are experiencing a lot of oversoul integrations right now that can very much feel similar, but I'm sorry, it's not the same thing as a different soul. It's not. And the level of like identity fuckery I deal with and have dealt with, I'm fucking proud of myself for how stable I am. Like I'm generally stable.
So stable.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and like, and to walk all of that and to still consistently hold such deep space for so many people, like I'm proud of myself. Okay. Yes. I'm not going to apologize for that. I'm not going to be like humble about it. Like I am proud of myself.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It goes back to loving yourself. Like I admire myself for that shit. Like good for me.
Yes,
you know?
exactly.
And I appreciate that about myself.
Who's going to give you that validation?
Yeah,
You're the
like,
one going through it.
Yeah. It's like, I got to appreciate that.
Yes.
Nobody else knows it the way I know it.
That's right.
So it's only my validation that even matters.
That's
it's for me to know it so intricately and to say, Christina, like, good fucking job. I'm proud of you. That's the only thing that's going to make me feel any type of way, because nobody else can actually know it the way I know it.
Yes.
You know, and people can know aspects of it, but nobody else can know it the way I know it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I fucking appreciate that about myself, and I'm proud of that about myself. And I think like there's so many things I've been through in the last couple of years, and I'm like,
If you can do that,
I can do it. I can handle it. But yeah, they're very intense spiritual experiences, and we all go through our own, like, that's what I'm saying. It's relative, you know?
Yeah.
It is relative, and like, we're all going to experience things, or maybe somebody else that wouldn't be intense, but like for you, it is completely turning your world upside down, you know? And so that's the growth. We all have that in our own ways. And I think that a lot more people are going to have very intense experiences because we are evolving so much, like very, very quickly as souls. I do feel that with the availability of technology and information, so many more people are exposed to frequencies they were not before. And so there's the logistic information and the opportunity to expand ourselves in that way, but there's also the opening for more life experiences and traveling and getting to know people. But there's also, I mean, the number of channels now, like there's so many people who are channeling and sharing vibrational work. Like it's so easy to get. And so we're getting activations that were few and far between before. And I think there are pros and cons to that, you know, but it's like a mass awakening, and people are evolving on an individual level so quickly now because there's so much more access and availability. And so what's happening is, even if we're not born with certain timelines, like for example, with the twin flame journey, even if you don't technically have your soul incarnated twice on this planet, you can have a twin flame experience genuinely, because that is a vibrational template that people who are not born with that, they're advancing so quickly that to get the lessons, they get plugged into that template.
Yeah.
And they have all the same experiences of a twin flame with somebody who vibrates very, very closely, even though it's not exactly the same person.
Yeah. And
so they can have a twin flame experience. That's one of the reasons, like, you know, for me with that topic, I was like, I don't really want to talk about it that much because it's so niche. Like, it's like not that many people are being affected by it, but now I've come to understand how many people are. And I talk to a lot of people where they'll say, like, I know I'm not an actual twin. Like, I know that person is not me in another body, but everything that it's like having these same exact dynamics because they're plugging into that template, because they've done so much soul evolution work that a regular relationship isn't enough. No. It's not going to cut it for what they're here to learn, because we do learn our most important, our biggest lessons through relationships. Yes. It's through mirroring. We require each other. Yes. So that's the point. Otherwise, why would we incarnate with all these people around us if we weren't supposed to?
That's right.
You know. So
that's right.
I think a lot more people are, you know, equipped to handle these very intense experiences, which means wilder and wilder shit starts to happen, and that can be very exciting. And you know, it's put your tools to the test, so to speak. Right. So yeah, good old twin flames, good old twinnies.
It's not for the weary.
I'm sure a lot of twin flames are going to listen to this episode.
Yep.
Because twins find twins.
That's right. We all find each other.
It's a very specific vibration.
We're all very connected.
Yeah.
It's a wild experience.
Well,
last question I have.
Yeah.
What makes you excited about life? Given all that you experience, you see so much of, you know, I do too. Like, you and I live between both realms, and that is a very unique experience to have as a human. And so with all that you've learned and all that you see and have access to, what still like keeps you going and makes you excited about this life for you?
Well, there's so much we can do here that we can't do other places. It doesn't feel the same. It's honestly the feeling.
Yeah.
Like we, in other dimensions and like you don't get the intensity that you can here. Like, it's like, I don't know. I mean, why do people like playing video games? You know, like, it's the same thing. It's like, because it's only in this video game that I have access to this world. And there's something about almost the scarcity of that. Like, this is a unique experience. And with any planet or any incarnation, you could say that, like, this is a uniquely divine experience. So why would I not want to squeeze the most out of wherever I'm at, you know? And I think there's so, I know there's so much darkness on the planet, so much struggle and so much suffering and so much bullshit, but there's also like, there's way more amazing things. Yeah. Like, we get to create and manifest here in a way that we don't other places. Like, there is something so fucking satisfying about the slow manifestation. There's something fucking satisfying about it, you know, as much as our ego doesn't like it, but it's like, if I think it and it comes, you get used to it. You know, other places, it's not so exciting. You don't appreciate it. Or the way that we experience love and relationships here. And the heartbreak is beautiful. You know, the creativity, the artistry that we have, like it's really incredible, like what we can create as humans and how we can, I think art is a big piece of it. And I see like life as a piece of art, you know, like you are creating your own art through your life and all of the ways that we can express and the conversations we can have. And like, there's something to learning. Like when you learn and how that for me like satisfies my emotional world and makes me feel like I'm expanded versus if you're already in a space where you're like connected with the infinite and you know everything, like, okay, yeah, that's not very exciting. Like there's nothing else to do. There's no
contrast.
Yeah. So there's so much the contrast. Like, I don't know. I just think there's so much you can do here. And I think about my life and I'm like, it's fucking exciting. I could do a million things. I could be a poet. I could be a writer. I could be a channel. I could be a coach. I could be, I could be a speaker. I could be an artist. I could do a million things. I could take surf lessons. I could take, singing lessons. There's so much you can do. And I don't know. There's a million companies I could make, I could start, I could jump into, I could join forces with. There's so many collaborations. There's so many people, like interesting people. There's so many fucking interesting people on this planet that you can learn from and you can expand your mind and you can talk to. Like, I don't know. It's the feeling. Like, and there's just always something new and fun to do and something new to unlock and discover. And in other places, sometimes it's like when things are too fast or too easy, you just don't appreciate it, you know? So I don't know, like for me, so much of that, again, what the core of that is the emotional world, you know, and feeling those highs and feeling that love and that joy and that expansiveness and that insight and that illumination and that inspiration. Yes. You know, I think for me, it's like that inspiration, that I love to feel. There's just nothing like it. Yeah. And that is knowing God. Yes, it is. Right? Like, why do we separate? Why are we in the illusion of separation? To know ourselves, to know God, right? When you are God, when you're everything, like, that's all you know. It's just oneness. Yeah. And so you separate to get to know yourself. And I'm like, I get to know God through every single person, through every single thing in my reality, all of it, right? And that's really fucking cool. So I don't know. I just think there's so much cool shit. And there's always new stuff.
That's true.
I'm always doing new things. I'm always learning new things. I'm always having new conversations. There's an abundance of information. Think about it. You could spend your whole life just reading books.
I would love to do that.
And it would be a new experience every day. Yeah. You're entering a new world every single day, right? Have a deep conversation with a new person every single day. Like, your life will expand. Level. Yes. It's so fucking fun, you know? So, I mean, I don't know. I think maybe that's a lot of like the divine child within. Like, you ask a kid, why do you like playing with your toys? You know, or what I was saying, why do you like playing a video game? Like, it's fun.
Yeah, it's joy. It's pure magic.
So that's how I feel about life. And I think a lot of people have forgotten that. And what I would say is you need to hang out with people who love life. Yes. Hang out with people who love life and you'll start to realize how you can love life.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you so much.
Thank
for everything you shared. And I'm so grateful for you and I love you. And thank you for being so open-hearted and open-minded with your own experiences and sharing and really leading by example. Like, you help so many people by being so open with what you have lived and continue to live. So thank you for that. And thank you for all the ways you expand me. And I love you so much.
Thank you. Well, I'm like, why live it if we don't talk about it, right?
That's right.
So I appreciate you and loved all of these questions and am constantly in awe of you and inspired by you. So it's an honor to be here with you today.
Thank you, babe.
And you know how much I love you. So thank you.
I love you. Multidimensional out.